Hello friends, this is Mike from Wright, and this is the explanations video for SAT 2's Writing and Language section, passage number 3, question 33. Now, this question comes up in the middle of the last paragraph of the passage, so let's just read down to it. It's not that far. Here, Wilmers and Estes. Wilmers and Estes caution, however, that having more otters in here, we want to answer question 32. The answer to that question is actually increasing the otter population, so we're going to substitute that in. Wilmers and Estes caution, however, that increasing the otter population will not automatically solve the problem of higher levels of carbon dioxide in the air. But they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. All right, so we've encountered question 33. What we're going to do is the same thing as we do for every single question when we encounter is go read the question. Here we find it on the side of the page, and we're going to ask ourselves, do we have all the information we need to answer this question now? Is it a grammar or writing strategy question? Or do we need to read the entire paragraph, getting an understanding of the context of the question? So here, looking at the answer choices to this question, these answer choices only differ from each other in terms of the punctuation they use. In fact, the wording is literally the same in every single answer choice. It's just a question of, like, where should we put these various punctuation marks? So we emphatically do not need a broader understanding of the meanings in this paragraph or in the passage as a whole. We really only need to understand the grammatical structure of the sentence to decide how we should frame this thought. So let's look again at how this sentence parses, how the sentence is structured. That way we'll figure out how we should punctuate this thing. All right, so the sentence starts with but they suggest. But they suggest, and who's they? They is Wilmers and Estes. These two scientists who were warning us that we can't just increase the otter population, expect that to solve global warming. These two scientists are suggesting, but Wilmers and Estes suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from. And here, let's just kind of forget about the punctuation here, but it's going to be sequestered or removed from, those four words anyway. Sequestered or removed from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Now let's break this down even further. Wilmers and Estes, these two scientists, are suggesting something. That's one of the things that's happening in this sentence. They suggest something is true. I'm Wilmers, and I'm saying, I'm going to suggest that this thing is true. So now let's jump down and think about what's the thing that they're suggesting. Well, they're suggesting that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Which is just to say that Wilmers and Estes are suggesting that the presence of otters, kind of like new subsidiary subject, new subject, the presence of otters provides a good model of something. So there's a couple of layers here. Wilmers and Estes suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of a thing. Okay, so let's think about what that thing is. What are we providing a good model of? What do we have a good model of? We're having a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere in a certain way through the management of animal populations. Okay, so there's a bunch of different clauses at work here. And let's zoom in now on the role of this or removed from. What's it doing? Here, the main verb in this sentence, well, the main verb at least in this little thing, in this good model of what? Of how carbon can be sequestered. Sequestered here is this verb that's acting on carbon. Wilmers and Estes have suggested that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered. And now this or removed from is providing an alternative verb. We're saying it could be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere. This is called a parenthetical clause. And the reason why it's called parenthetical clause is, that parenthetical, that word comes from parentheses. It's the kind of clause in a sentence that you could put between parentheses because you're kind of just adding an additional piece of information. And there are a couple sort of like rules, general rules that apply to all these parenthetical clauses. And this is the kind of question we're in right now. This question is called a non-restrictive and parenthetical elements question. These types of questions test your ability to follow the general rules when you're adding in parenthetical clauses. Now, let's just get kind of a hang of like what parenthetical clauses are. They're clauses that you shove into the middle of a sentence that don't need to be there. You could have a sentence that works completely well without them, but you want to shove in some extra info for the reader's benefit, or just to add some side fact in the middle. And it's just like, by the way, you don't have to read this, but like, if you want to read it, it'll be good for you. So let's just getting this example right here. This is sort of a simplified, super simple parenthetical clause. Parenthetical clauses, like this one, are easy once you get the hang of them. Now this is true. Parenthetical clauses are easy once you get the hang of them. And then look what I just did. I just removed the parenthetical clause here. Like this one is the parenthetical clause. It's a parenthetical clause because it's adding like a little piece of information. It's saying, like, oh, like this is a parenthetical clause. This, you see me right here? I'm a parenthetical clause, like me. But the main purpose of the sentence is to say that parenthetical clauses are easy once you get the hang of them. The sentence, the core structure of the sentence is parenthetical clauses are easy once you get the hang of them. And then this little parenthetical clause right here, the one that says, like this one, is sort of shoved into the middle of the sentence to give a sort of extra bit of detail. All right, that's what's going on in this sentence right here. Here, this or removed from is part of it involves a parenthetical clause that's defining the word sequestered. Here, sequestered is a big vocab word, So, and really, even in this article, it's a technical, science-y term. So they're defining the word sequestered for us. They're providing an alternative, a synonym for the word sequestered inside this parenthetical clause. So their use of that parenthetical clause is going to need to follow the normal rules, and you can see it in this simplified example as well. The first major rule is that parenthetical clauses need to be offset by two of the same thing. You can offset parenthetical clauses with 2 commas. That's pretty common. You can also offset parenthetical clauses with 2 dashes, a dash on either side. That's also pretty common. And of course, you can offset parenthetical clauses with literal parentheses, an open parentheses and a closed parentheses. That's also a thing that happens. The important thing, though, is that you can't start off with an open parentheses and then end with like a comma. It's got to be symmetrical. It needs to be offset by the same thing on both sides. The sentence also needs to make sense if you take the parenthetical clause out. The parenthetical clause needs to be optional, so to speak. You need to be able to read the sentence without it. So here, this is to say, this parenthetical clause is right because you can read the sentence and just removing it from it. Here, parenthetical clauses are easy once you get the hang of them. That makes sense. So we need to find the punctuation that follows both of those rules. And so the tests for these are, does the punctuation match on both sides? And does the sentence as a whole work if I take the parenthetical clause out of the sentence? So let's go through each answer choice and run it through that lens. So here, answer choice A, no change. But they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed, semicolon, from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Now, multiple reasons why this is wrong. I think 3 reasons why this is wrong. First, the parenthetical clause or removed is not offset by 2 symmetrical things. Here, you're not allowed to offset a parenthetical clause by 2 semicolons. That's not something you're allowed to do. But you also aren't allowed to aren't allowed to offset it with a comma up front and a semicolon at the end. That's not how you offset a parenthetical clause. They need to match. So that's one reason why this answer choice is wrong. A second reason is how you use semicolons. The rule for semicolon is that it needs to be able to separate 2 independent clauses. That is to say, semicolons separate 2 thoughts that could stand alone on their own, each independently as sentences. And that's not what's going on here. Here, the second clause of the sentence, from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations, isn't a complete sentence. It lacks a subject and a verb. From the atmosphere through the management of animal populations, like what's happening from the atmosphere, we don't know. So this semicolon use is wrong because both sides of it aren't independent clauses. And then separately, and this, maybe I'm going to get proven wrong by some future test, but I have literally never seen a correct answer choice on the SAT with a semicolon. Semicolon has just never been right in my experience on the SAT. So that's, something to file away. Don't rely on that too hard, but it's a pattern, it's worth storing in your old mind. Okay, so those are 3 reasons why answer choice A is wrong. Let's look at answer choice B. Here, B says, but they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Now this straight up, this sounds good to me. I like the way it sounds. My ear is like, yeah. And part of that is because it is offset by 2 commas. It's offset by symmetrical things. Here it's like sequestered or removed from, doopity-doopity-doo. So that is how you separate a parenthetical clause. But let's run it through that second test. The test is, this sentence needs to make sense if you take the parenthetical clause out. Now, answer choice B says that the parenthetical clause is this entire thing, these 3 words, or removed from. That whole thing is the parenthetical clause. So if we read the sentence without those words, it needs to make sense. So let's try that. Here the sentence reads, but they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Now, you kind of need to know that you don't use sequestered that way. We can't use sequestered that way. You can't, how carbon can't be sequestered the atmosphere. Carbon needs to be sequestered from the atmosphere. You sequester things from something else. Sequester means, well, sequester means to remove or separate. But you can't separate something the atmosphere. You have to separate something from the atmosphere. You can't sequester the atmosphere. Or carbon can't be sequestered the atmosphere. It has to be sequestered from the atmosphere. You do have to know that. But anyway, if you do know that, that's the reason why this answer choice is wrong. The sentence doesn't make sense if you take this from and you put it inside the parenthetical. The question doesn't make sense if you take this from right here, put it inside the parenthetical, so that you would have to read the sentence without it if you took the parenthetical out. The from needs to be inside the sentence itself. The sentence needs to read, but they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered from the atmosphere through the management of animal populations. Now, jumping ahead, that's what answer choice D does. The only difference between answer choice B and answer choice D is that they move the comma 1 word over. Instead of being after the from, it's before the from. And this makes sense when you read it aloud. It's just, as I read it just now, but they suggest that the presence of otters provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered or removed from the atmosphere through the management blah, blah, blah. If you take that out, it provides a good model of how carbon can be sequestered from the atmosphere. So that makes sense. That passes both of those tests. On to answer choice C. Answer choice C is just wrong because that extra comma is not necessary. Here, again, we're adding this extra piece of information. It's saying like, or removed, and that extra piece of information doesn't need commas inside it. We're trying to say that one alternative word to sequestered is the word removed. And you don't need to say like, or removed. You just don't need that many pauses. This comma isn't necessary. You wouldn't pause there if you were speaking. You don't pause there if you're writing. Here, that would be kind of like adding a comma after the word like or after the word this. Here, parenthetical clauses like this one are easy once you get the hang of them. You don't need to say that. You can say parenthetical clauses like this one are easy once you get the hang of them. Okay, that's all for these answer choices. I'll see you all in the next video.